So here we are. You've been living your life, I've been living my life, and somehow, out of these limited number of moments that we have, we're here together. Now, I don't know, how many moments you're going to get or how many moments I'm going to get. Some people get lots of days, some people just get a few days, but everybody gets a finite number of days. And God, in His power and providence, has decided that we'll be here together for this moment. And so I wonder what He's got for you. Do you think He's big enough that He might have something for every single person in this room? Could God do that? I do. Let's ask Him. Father, let some word that is heard be yours. In the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. So this word holy, it's a weird word. It's kind of a churchy word. And I don't know, if you've been around church for a while, you've probably noticed whatever you want to say about church people, we can make things weird if you let us. We can, if there's a way to say something that's like slightly more awkward, the church world will come up with it. I actually have a buddy that he wrote this AI bot that he trained to translate phrases into like modern day Christianese, and he had me rolling. I want to share some of the things that this bot said to him, just in case you want to know like the right like church way to say some of these things. So he fed into this bot, quote, "Did you get dropped on your head as a baby?" And the bot said, this is the right way to say it if you wanted to ask somebody that question. "Were you baptized with a bit too much zeal as an infant?" It's good. This is a good one. Some of you guys might want to use this one this week. We should go on a date. Yeah, I'm going to give you the way to ask it right here. We should partake in a fellowshipping rendezvous. That's hot. I'm going to text my wife right now, actually. All right, this is a good one. I know you guys would never have to use this, but sometimes I feel like I want to use this. Stop talking. You are being annoying. This is the right, like, churchy, loving, like Jesus way to say that. Please refrain from speaking, dear brother/sister, as your words are becoming a trial to my spirit. That's the best. I'm taking that with me every day for the rest of my life. You're becoming a trial to my spirit right now. I feel like that's what my wife is going to text me back right now, actually. All right, and I don't know, maybe some of you need to do this if you need to break up with somebody. I think we should break up. That's the phrase that got fed in. Maybe some of you need to like take your phone out and text this to somebody right now. I don't know. I don't know your life. But if you need to, if they're in the room right now, don't look at them. Don't look right at them right now. Just tell them later. But here's how you're going to tell them. I believe the Lord is leading us to different paths in our spiritual journeys. In other words, it's not you, it's Him. God can handle it. You can blame stuff on Him like that. He's fine. So holy is a word like that, right? It's a word that has taken on this extra meaning where I'm not sure we really know what this word really means. Here's what I think most of us think when we say the word holy. I think mostly we think if somebody's holy, it means you don't do bad things. And usually little kind of petty bad things, like if you said, Jesus is holy in modern day context, you'd just be saying like, Jesus doesn't vape, and He doesn't date. He probably doesn't really look at anybody. And if he played video games, he would only play Tetris. That's what holy means. Like, you don't do bad things, right? And I think it also kind of means to us that you're kind of out of touch. You're sort of detached. You're sort of over there on cloud 9 a little bit. You don't have 2 feet on the ground right now. Like, if someone's holy, you can't just talk to them about basketball. You got to talk to them about like fasting or something like that if they're holy, right? But what I'd like to try to do is help myself recapture a more biblical Jesus idea of this word holy. What does this really mean? Because I do think it's been sort of captured and watered down, and the concept of holiness is much bigger than any of those things. To do so, I need to talk about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu a little bit. Any BJJ practitioners in the room right here? Anybody? One or two? Yeah. Any wrestlers? Any grapplers? Yeah. High five, fist bump, guys. High five, fist bump. So I had no idea that they were going to share this amazing testimony about this wrestler this week when I planned this message. I never did any kind of grappling or wrestling. I've always been into martial arts of some kind, but it's been a dream to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a decade, and then kids and life and whatever. But about 6 months ago, we finally pulled the trigger. Me and all three of my sons were all doing it together. There's a legit club not too far from my house, and it's incredible. If you don't know that much about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's arguably the greatest grappling style in the world. There's some, judo and wrestling and sambo. There's some good ones, but in terms of just groundwork, it's incredible. But it's also like it lives up to the hype. A black belt in jiu-jitsu is like you cannot touch this man. You cannot touch this woman if you go and spar with one of these people. And I knew that going in, but you don't know it until you actually roll. In jiu-jitsu, you call it rolling, wrestling or sparring. So you roll with one of these upper belts, you don't really know. Like you know, but you don't really know. First off, so I've been doing this for about 6 months. I'm a no-stripe white belt. I don't know anything. Every once in a while I get lucky and I pull something off. But at the beginning, I was getting tapped out and submitted by white belts. I got submitted by a 13-year-old. I mean, it was amazing. It's like I knew this stuff was incredible, and I'm not like a totally frail dude, but the skill level is just amazing. But I really like to roll with the upper belts. I really like, because they are just on a whole nother level. They're just straight up above me. Like usually what happens when I roll with a blue belt or a purple belt or whatever is they'll sub me, tap me out like 3 times real quick. It's like arm bar, cross collar choke, rear naked choke, boom, boom, boom. Within the first minute, I'm just tapping out. And then they ease up and they let me work. They let me try some stuff. But it's like they got to send a message like, you need to understand that I can do whatever I want to you. You're completely helpless. I'm just in this like moist, claustrophobic cave, just trying to whatever. I have no idea. I'm just getting smashed into the mat by this dude pressing down on me, knee on me. And then they'll ease up and they'll let me work. Now the coach, he's a multi-stripe black belt. He can do that to those guys. I mean, he's just on a next level. And he has the full Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu uniform, mullet, fanny pack, cauliflower ear, black shorts with no pockets, top to bottom. But he's this interesting mix of, the dude is a legitimate killer. He's got an MMA record, wins and losses. And if you ask me, the guys that lose pro MMA fights and are still walking around are scarier than the guys that win pro MMA fights. He's like a legit killer, but he's the sweetest guy in the world. He ends every class with, I love you guys so much. If there's anything I can do for you, let me know. St. Patrick's Day, he painted all his toenails green because he knew the kindergarten kids would think it was hilarious at the school, right? He's just this weird mix of dangerous and extremely tender and sweet that I really admire. But completely untouchable. He is in control. He's so sweet and polite that you don't realize it when you're around him. But it's like being in a room with a lion. He could do whatever he wanted to you, whenever he wanted to do it. He could do whatever he wanted to people that are extremely skilled at what they're doing. But he's so sweet and tender, you don't realize it. He's letting you work. He lets you work. Holiness is like that. Holiness is more like that. Like God is so big and so powerful that playing around with God is like playing around with live wires. It's like playing around with nuclear fission. Playing around with God is like playing in the ocean. Like, you can surf the waves and you can swim and splash around, but I hope for a second you're not foolish enough to think that you control the ocean, that you could swim against the rip current. No hope in the world. Playing around with God is like playing around with something that is immense and powerful and dangerous. And that's why when God came into the world, Angels appeared in the sky, and what happened to those shepherds? They were terrified. They fell to their faces. They were terrified. That's what holiness means. That's what you're dealing with God. And yet, he did not come into the world as a dragon. He came into the world as a baby. And so there's this other side of holiness. And it has to do with what the angels said. They said, don't be afraid. They were terrified. Don't be afraid. We've come to bring good news for all people. This is good news. This is a good thing for all the people. There's this other side to holiness. So about 25 years ago now, I was out walking late at night. At this point in my life, I was living alone in this dingy little apartment near the university where I had dropped out of college. And I would often go out at night just thinking, late at night, like 3 in the morning. And I saw something that I never expected to see so late in the season, because this was late fall, it was cold, and this is an urban environment. I went to college at the University of Cincinnati, so it's kind of like a downtown area. I'm walking down, and I see in the moonlight on the sidewalk a snake. It's wounded, like a cat or a raccoon got to it or something, and it's freezing because it's late in the season. And this is very weird, and it seemed like a weird moment. It stopped me dead in my tracks. It seemed like something bigger than just a snake. It seemed like an omen. It seemed like a vision. Now, I was out on that walk for a weird reason. I had $20 in my pocket, and I was looking for somebody to give it to. And the reason that happened is, maybe an hour before that, I was in my apartment, and I was on my knees at the side of my bed, and I was praying, and I was asking God, I was like, what can I do? I want to do something. I want to go out and do something. And then I got this idea. I had $20. That was a very big deal to me at that time. I had this idea that I could give it away to somebody who needed it more than I did. And so I asked God, I was like, God, show me who needs this money. I'll go out and look for them. I used to do wild stuff like that in my faith. I'm embarrassed that I don't do stuff like that. There's a reason why Jesus said if you want to inherit the kingdom of heaven, you've got to become like a child. Sometimes you've got to do wild stuff that doesn't make sense. So I took this $20 bill and I went out and I was wandering the streets and I saw that snake dying and wounded. And then I kept walking, and later on I found this woman was kind of slumped over at a bus stop. She didn't look like she was homeless. She looked like she was working 6 jobs. Like she looked exhausted. And I felt that little like she was highlighted for a moment. I was like, that's the one. So I just walked over to her and I handed her this $20 bill and said, Jesus wants you to have this. And she kind of blinked her eyes open and took it. And there was a look of surprise and almost hurt in her eyes that made me know I got it right. Or at least I didn't get it too far wrong. Now, I was praying prayers like that because some other really big changes had happened in my life. Like a couple of weeks before then, I had flushed a half an ounce of weed down the toilet because I started to feel like you can't do this anymore. You're not supposed to be high. You need to be thinking clearly. And a couple weeks before that, my wife and I, my girlfriend and I, had made the difficult decision. We had done things all out of order and become sexually active and all that, and we made the difficult decision to knock that off and try to do things the right way, the way God wanted us to do it. And we dated for another 3+ years before we ended up getting married. But now we've been married for 19 years, so don't worry. We made up for lost time. So, and I made those big decisions because about a month before that, I went to a church. It was the first church I'd ever gone to, really. And they were reading out of Acts chapter 8, where the guy from Ethiopia decided he wanted to be baptized. And I was like, that's what I need to do. That's my next step. And that happened because a few months before that, I started reading the Bible for reasons that are still mysterious to me. And what was happening was these broken places in my life were being mended. These hurts were being healed. Things were being made whole. Or another way to say that is, the snake was wounded and it was dying. Back in the beginning in the garden, things were whole. But there was a snake in the garden. And the first man and the first woman, they listened to the lies, just as every single person in this room has listened to the lies. We've all listened to the lies. And we've got broken places, and we've got hurt places, and we've got places that are incomplete, and insecurities, and guilt, and shame, and all of this brokenness. But Jesus is holy. Jesus is whole. There's these two senses of the word in which Jesus is holy and is above us. He is one of a kind, like no other, of immense, unimaginable power and might. And he is whole. He heals. He mends the broken places. He is holy. Now, I don't know where you guys are coming from or what you're going back to, but this is what I want to say to you starting this week off. Whatever you're facing in your life, thanks to Jesus, the snake is wounded and it is dying. There was a promise in the garden. God said to Eve, your offspring is going to crush the serpent's head. He is holy. And Jesus is also whole. Whatever's missing, whatever's broken, Jesus is holy. Right now, he's letting us work. He's letting us work. It's not going to be like that forever. Scripture says that one day every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is the Lord. A time is coming when every single man, woman, and child will tap out. But for now, Jesus has given you to you. And he said, choose. What are you going to do? What would you like to do with you? I want to warn you, if you try to hang on to your life, if you try to keep it for yourself, you will lose it. If you give it back to me, you will experience a real life better than you could ever hope for or imagine. Jesus is holy, one of a kind, above all. Jesus is holy. He's whole. He's healed. And the question he has for each one of us is, what do you choose to do with you? So, what will you do with you? It's up to you for a while.